Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, or good evening, depending where you're joining us from today. Thank you for signing on today to our webinar. We'll be talking about automating employee onboarding the right way, your way. I'm Sasha Tolkova, Marketing Manager here at WITHM. We will just take care of a few housekeeping items, and then we can get started. So we are recording the webinar today. We will distribute a link to the slide deck and the recording later this afternoon. We'll try to keep it to about a 50-minute session. We have a great demo to show you. We will leave about 10 minutes for questions at the end. Please don't hold back. Feel free to submit your questions throughout the presentation in the questions pane of the GoToWebinar control panel. If we don't get to the questions, we can address them by email later on. Today, joining us, we have Dale Tuttle from WITHM and, of course, Mike Fitzmaurice from WEBCON. Excited to have you both. And Dale, why don't you kick it off and we can get started.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for attending. And Sasha, as usual, thank you for the intros. I'm Dale Tuttle, a partner here at WITHM Digital. We're on the advisory side of the house. Those of you who know WITHM is a public accounting firm. We have a very strong tech advisory team. I'm one of the partners in that group. And I've been doing this for a long time. In fact, when I did this slide, I had to up my years of experience reluctantly, instead of hiding behind the 15 years, which is technically correct, but I needed to properly age myself. And it's true, fun fact, I'd like to say probably a recovering PhD. I used to be a professor back in the day at Virginia Tech, for those of you in the Washington, D.C. metro area. And another funny thing, instead of Virginia Tech, I have a kid at University of Virginia, so that's caused a little bit of a problem, but I'm dealing with that effectively. But anyway, even better, we're joined by Mike Fitzmaurice, and Mike, let's see if you can do better than my fun fact.
Oh, well, let's see. Yes,
I'm sure you can.
I'm the Vice President for North America for WEBCON, and I'm the Global Chief Evangelist for the company. I've been doing, neither of us is a spring chicken, but that actually means both of us are experienced in what we're talking about, and we're not just bandying about clever ideas we think might be fun to entertain. This stuff comes from experience, a lot of it, and that means watching a lot of people make mistakes, including ourselves, and seeing successes, and that matters too. That would be where I come from. But actually, okay, fun fact is also a little bit of where I come from. I worked for Microsoft for 11 years. Most of that time was spent on SharePoint in one incarnation or another. I was part of the team that delivered and curated the first 4 releases, so 2001, 2003, 2007, and 2010. Worked on all 4 of those. And I am the very first SharePoint evangelist. Long time ago, there was just one person knocking on doors asking people with technical chops, either developers or IT pros, to take a look at this thing. And yeah, it could have easily been someone else, but it was me. And
I remember those days, Mike.
Yeah, I told you, I told other people, you told your friends, it snowballed, and now it's even bigger than SharePoint. Might even be bigger than Microsoft. This whole idea of cloud services for collaboration and content management and so on, where it's not just about posting transactions and delivering pages. I think there's a lot here, and a lot here is worth it. But yes, you want a claim to fame? That's my claim to fame. I'm the first I invented SharePoint evangelism.
Well, we're going to use that experience today, actually, in your new role. And what you should expect today is we're going to dive in a little bit about how you can automate some of those key events, essentially, in employee. We like to call it the employee life cycle. We're going to focus a lot on onboarding because people are really focused on onboarding today. Certainly, because all over the place there's acute labor shortages, and we're actually getting these questions all the time from our clients, prospective clients, about how do we deal with this? We're getting we have tons of need, but we need to get people through a structured process.
Yeah.
What we're going to show you today, what Mike will show you, in fact, is how WEBCON can help you with that. WEBCON is a low-code automation tool, which is, we have a partnership with WEBCON, and we're going to talk about how all that works, what it means to you, certainly for this problem area. But more importantly, you get to see a live demo. And Mike, I think you've got at least 2 planned, and I know you'd love to do more than that, but we only have an hour.
Yeah, 55 minutes and counting. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
There will just be 2 demos.
Well, anyway, we are about Witham Digital. We take folks to the cloud. That's what we do. We're about 50 plus people. We've been around for a while. We've been with Witham, geez, for over 4 years now. But we're a fast track partner or a Microsoft Gold partner. And then what we do is we have these strategic partnerships with other firms like WEBCON and Mike that are really, really good at certain things. And in this case, low code process automation. And don't worry, we're going to walk through what that means in a little bit, and you'll see how it can help solve this problem of, well, specifically onboarding, but we're going to uncover what onboarding really means and the other components or aspects of it. And Mike, why don't you tell us a little bit about WEBCON?
Well, WEBCON is in the business process automation business. We have a low-code well, that'll happen on the next slide. How about this? WEBCON is a big player in business process management and workflow automation and low-code, no-code development. But most of the people attending this webinar have probably not heard the word WEBCON before, if most of you are attending from North America. We've been around for 15 years. We're in 30 countries. We've got 70 partners worldwide, 650 clients. We're actually quite big, but we expanded out from Central Europe steadily, smoothly, and gradually, to be perfectly honest. It's a European discipline mentality. I actually kind of applaud it, although it seems unusual by American standards. We're growing as quickly as possible is the norm.
Right.
Yeah, but about 2 years ago, WEBCON crossed the pond and set up a foothold here in North America. And to their credit, thank you very much. Witham was one of our first North American partners. They've been great. They get it. So, and hopefully after seeing this, you'll get it too. The key things to our platform is that it's incredibly versatile. You are building applications that you configure. You don't code them, and they become part of an array of solutions that are delivered either through a unified portal or a unified mobile app, or they can be placed inside of Teams channels or SharePoint sites or Outlook messaging interactions. You can have it your way. But the point is, you don't need to reinvent the wheel every time you have a new applications solution. You can borrow from previous knowledge, and users can borrow from previous skills that they've ramped up on. It's complete. When you build it, it's not, I'm going to use one tool to create a workflow, another tool to create the form, something else to model the data, another thing for reporting. You're building an entire application, and every part of the application knows about the other parts, and the whole thing can be deployed from dev to test to production as a set. It can be updated as a set, secured as a set, monitored as a set, troubleshot or troubleshooted, probably troubleshot.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one.
Traced and debugged, how about that, as a set. But the biggest thing, probably the most, shall we say, unusual thing about us, and delightfully so, is this technology we have called instant change. In the world of WEBCON, we kind of assume an application is not a deliverable, it's a relationship. So, and most consultants will nod emphatically upon hearing this. Almost nothing you build is, shall we say, right the first time. It may be exactly what someone asked for, but what they want likely changed in between you starting work and finishing work. And what's more, even if you did get it right, 5 days later, maybe even 5 minutes later, something was going to happen out there in the world that will make them want something else, something different. And so being able to say that the cost of change is really, really low, you can make the change quickly because you don't need to keep chasing the dependencies because they're all very obvious and all interconnected. And the biggest thing is when you deploy it, do you need to go back and clean up everything that's already in progress? And the answer for us is no. Instant change means the changes take effect instantly. If I deploy an update to an application, even the stuff that's in flight, even forms that are open and being edited by users can change immediately to reflect the new rules of the application. That's a
Well,
really
I think that certainly applies to, the topic that we're going to be focusing on today is, first of all, one size doesn't fit all. Processes change, markets change, everything changes very quickly today, and that's overhyped, but true. We all know it. We don't, we all experience it, I should say. But things are often complicated as well. I'm talking from the process standpoint, Mike. And when you think about employee onboarding, you have, it's more than account provisioning. I hear that all the time, right? When an employee comes on board, IT has a certain perspective, but benefits people have a different perspective. Business people have a different perspective. That's been your observations and experience, right?
That's absolutely right. In fact, if I could count, no, I need far too many fingers and toes to count the number of examples I see on some other product pages or technology pages about employee onboarding, and what it really is just account provisioning.
Right.
And it's not that that's not important, it is, but onboarding is bigger than that.
Well, the other thing that I find too is even within whatever process we're talking about, I know we talk about this later as well, there's lots of sub-activities as well. So onboarding itself, right, even if it's account provisioning, there's lots of steps, there's lots of things going on. And let's see if we can get this thing to move forward, Mike.
Okay.
There it goes. Now, Mike, I think you want to show us a little bit about this. You want to give us some context about what we're going to see?
I am going to show you an example of this is actually in use in production. Well, a more elaborate version of this is in use in production at one of our clients. But let me see, what do I need to do here? I'm a panelist right now. I think I need to be promoted to a presenter, if you don't mind. And you just did. Thank you very much. That's exactly what I needed to have happen. All right.
It's magic.
It's a very, very good thing. And let's proceed. Okay. We are looking at a WEBCON Business Application Center. It's a website that is capable of placing bringing together a lot of different applications for a lot of different purposes. And we mentioned that to IT. They may think of there being a process for creating new Active Directory accounts. There might be a different process for creating Exchange mailboxes, especially if this is an on-premises environment or a hybrid environment. Creating a digital identity and creating the services used by it might be very separate steps. There also might be assets like, let's see, how about assets that are available to be assigned to people? There might also be things like assets that need to be handed out. Well, here, assets by type. There are several of them. There might be desktop PCs, there might be laptops. They get handed out to different people for different purposes. There are lots, and that's just IT. If I am thinking, however, bigger picture, and I want to create a brand new employee, say to fill that particular assistant, that particular job, and the name of the candidate is this person. We've already entered her in the system previously. And we've set up a salary for her that's not in United States dollars. Let's see. So anything else, planned employment date will be shortly, and we can send this up for approval. Now, this is the beginning of the onboarding process in which we see that we have this record. We want to see what happens next. Well, I noticed that it's with the manager right now. It's moved from me, it's moved to this guy named Luke Cloudwalker, and he's going to approve this. And if so, a lot of other things are going to happen. And here's what I wanted to show you, because I want to peel back the curtain. We got a lot to talk about, and I have another demo to show you. So I don't want to dwell through every single step in this process, because if you want to look at the entire thing, it kind of looks like this. This is the workflow as designed to handle the entire onboarding process from soup to nuts. Let's zoom in a little bit because it's a little big. And here's what's happening.
And Mike, this is a designer embedded in WEBCON, correct?
Yes, this is our designer. And I guess if you are process people taking a look at this, this doesn't look like a program flow chart where you see every single tiny little step, even a box on the screen if two numbers needed to be added together. These are statuses. We're moving from the initiation stage to the manager approval stage, possibly to the director approval stage, and then eventually all roads lead to HR approval, and then it moves on. So if we think we found the right person, we're checking to make sure that everybody signs off on it. And there are ways of bypassing this. Each of these is governed by a business rule. If you open it up, you can drill down into it. The point is, at a certain point, we're going to prepare a job offer. We'll await the candidate to accept it. And if so, then we start doing the things you think about as normal, like granting privileges. For example, starting an Active Directory account, starting an Exchange workflow, starting payroll, setting up permissions and so on, assigning them to the right groups and so on. And then we wait for all of those sub-processes to finish. And if they have, then we send out a notification to their manager with their new username and password and a whole bunch of other stuff. And then we go back and report to another workflow in case we were called by another workflow. The person's employed. We might update a database somewhere else, and we sit out here, and this is a ready-to-use record that can be used for a variety of other things. But that's when I think onboarding, I'm thinking this kind of stuff. And there's probably more to it than this, because you know what we left out? Scheduling training and facilities man, giving them a parking space if we have any available. Those things need to be factored in too. But this is one workflow calling another process. So for example, this one where we start an Active Directory workflow. If you're not using a really big monitor, you'll notice you won't see that some of these processes are in blue and others are in green. The green ones actually live somewhere else. We've linked them together so that I, the application designer, can see the big picture. But someone else owns this application called AD Account Management. And the process here for creating a new account is, register the request, send it to the IT department. The IT department verifies it. They might reject it. Hopefully they won't. They might send it back to the author with questions, or they may approve it and proceed. And at this point, this is when we interface directly with Active Directory or Azure AD, and then we move into the status where the account is created. And this reports status back to the parent workflow.
And Mike, I think it's worth pointing out that, we mostly Mike, when it comes to the demo, what we did is we talked about, what are some of the common things that are involved in a process like this, but just to make sure we have it up front. We know that everybody has their own unique process, right? They may be, they're hitting all these common things, but you make what you adapt this to what you need that process to be, and that's the key, because the product itself is adaptable to whatever process, however you define your process, you can implement yours. We're not imposing a process on you with the tool.
That's absolutely right. We have templates that we can start you off with that show you how we've seen a lot of people do it, but we don't expect you to treat them as constraints. Those are just starting points. In fact, in this particular example, this thing about asking the author for additions, this didn't exist. This was originally written by somebody with a lot more familiarity with shall we say, forward-only automation scripting. And so they figured, oh, okay, it's either going to get rejected or created, and we'll treat rejected like an error that somebody has to handle somewhere else. Then someone thought about it more from a business value point of view, a human point of view, and said, you know, they might just have a question, and rejecting the request just because they want to find out if someone's name is spelled properly, or whether there's a name conflict and they want to make sure that the name combination they're going to use instead is okay. You know, who's it going to hurt if we send the workflow backwards for a minute and check to see if it's all right? So this actually has gone through multiple iterations over a period of time as well. But if you'll notice, we've got at this point, what this company thinks of as onboarding involves, you know, the worker going through the initial onboarding request with everybody approving the hire. So really, this is the hiring workflow. But that then triggers account provisioning, resource provisioning, setting up an electronic folder for the HR department to store things, excuse me, setting up employee goals. This is a form that gets filled out by the employee and the manager. And then there is a final process where at the end of goals and evaluation, here, let's just jump into this. After goals are created, we then schedule their 90-day probationary interview to make sure everything worked out okay. Because in this particular company, they hire somebody provisionally for 90 days. And they can be terminated for any reason during that period. It's much more difficult after that. They kind of go all in after 90 days. Again, it's that company's policies and procedure that say behave that way.
And Mike, you know, another thing, when you talk about process, at least here at Witham, what we do at that checkpoint, and not everybody does a checkpoint, but I know a lot of people do, is how did the process itself go, right? Because I think when you're talking about process automation, you're also talking about continually refining your process to make sure it reflects, you know, real world contact with your employees, so to speak, and making sure that it's efficient, productive, there's no, you know, bottlenecks. Because rarely do processes survive too long before they need to be changed based on just experience, as in this case, hiring people and getting them onboarded.
You're taking the words right out of my mouth, and I'm happy that you're doing it. Yeah, the key here is, to this particular company, this is what they care about. To someone else, security, you know, making sure that badges are printed and ready within the first hour of them being on campus. Maybe that's the most important thing to them. In which case, this overall onboarding workflow will work a little bit different, but that's okay. It just depends. This application was built up relatively quickly. And the thing that I really like about this, one of the reasons I joined WEBCON, is this is not a user-friendly diagram that was presented to explain a process that's completely independent of a much more intricate flowchart style diagram that is used for the real application. No, this does double duty. The model is the actual workflow design. And when we need to do more than things like notify people and assign people responsibilities and present them with forms and so on, that's when along paths you could say, okay, I need you to do these extra things. There's a long list of them down here. The point is, you don't normally need to see all of these extra activities when you're explaining what's going on big picture to business users. I can show a business user this, they'll understand it. And what's more, they'll tell me where I got it wrong and how to change it. Or even if I got it right, how to improve it. How about I pass control back to you?
All right, I can take it here, which okay. I think, let's see if that worked. I think it did, right?
It did. And
look at us.
Only looking at me,
Mike.
So either I turn off my camera or you turn on yours. It looks weird for me to just standing around with reaction shots.
Yep, I'm back online, I think.
There you are.
Yep, I'm back. We'll see if we can give you back
better
control.
Than mine. It looks like you definitely think about analyzing processes and relationships. That's good.
Right. So again, why would you want to have an automation tool? And Mike, of course, is works for a software company. I work for a consulting company, right? So what we do though is, we're always trying to think about, what really is at the heart of a process, and it really is a bunch of activities, right? But HR itself has a bunch of processes and then sub activities. Things can get very complicated. We've worked with larger companies, smaller companies, even small companies though can have pretty complicated things that they need to do for onboarding. But just a few of the things that I would automate, or we recommend you automate, is your vacancy notifications and the whole recruiting process, the hiring, onboarding, which you saw today. Goal setting is a biggie. What happens when someone comes on, and what's that whole process can it look like? And what's interesting to me though is that often there'll be separate systems for all this sort of stuff. So there won't be a unified process, if you will, to handle all these different processes. And you can, certainly with a tool like WEBCON, you can automate lots of these processes and either run them, and have different people responsible for them. It's not like, for instance, one person would have to run the whole process. The idea here is that you can support whatever your process is, and we know that there can be a lot of processes for in your HR process. That's why we like to call it employee lifecycle management, actually. But that's the key, is that, again, adaptable and flexible. And we'll talk more in a few minutes about low code, but as you saw Mike, and I know Mike, you're going to do a demo here in a few minutes, but what you saw was the panel that Mike, the control panel that Mike had to actually visualize, create, and make these processes come to life and automate them to make them faster, more efficient, and traceable, right? And improve metrics on how that process is actually running over time. That's another thing we didn't even get into yet.
Yeah, we probably would have bandwidth for this, but if you want to do a series of these, maybe we can go into monitoring HR activity next time. But this matters. So let's talk about employee life cycle. But the thing before, in the previous slide, that set of bullets, what I was going to point out is that about, and it's okay, you don't need to go back to it. Okay, fine, thanks.
Yay.
Look at half of these have nothing to do with onboarding.
Right.
Employee lifecycle is not a way of renaming employee onboarding to make it more elaborate and fancy sounding. It's that the employee's doing a lot of things with us over and over and over and over again, and we need to be mindful of that. All right, if you wouldn't mind throwing the baton back to me, I will do demo number 2.
Let's see if you're on the list, Mike.
Yep, you did. I'm
okay.
in. And if you see my screen, yep, there it is. Okay, let's have at it. So we are looking at a dashboard for a particular application. And something, before we do this, I just wanted to make one point, especially for people that work in the Microsoft stack. If you're using WEBCON, you can go directly to our portal and use a lot of applications simultaneously. It's kind of convenient to do that. But we recognize completely that not everybody will want to go to yet another website. Our applications can be placed seamlessly into SharePoint sites in the form of web parts. Our apps can be completely seamlessly dropped into Teams channels. Our applications can be dropped seamlessly into Outlook and mobile devices and everything else. Just wanted to say that quickly and get it off the side.
Well, that's important, Mike. I'm glad you brought it up, because we do a lot of work in Teams, and making Teams essentially the point that you are running a good hunk of your business, and that's an important point. WEBCON can essentially become a tab in a team, correct?
Yeah, it's important to be where the users are. No two ways about it. Okay, now this is a custom dashboard that's been built up. We're showing all the employees that we have at the organization. There are 4 so far, and all the requests to do something with these employees. So we are thinking in terms of life cycle. So some of these guys, let's see, what step are we in at the moment? So I have data all about a particular employee, but I also have status information that tells me where they stand at the moment. So this guy, John Jones, If I open him up, I see everything I requested for him to do, but he's still being onboarded at the moment. We treat onboarding as a separate operation off to the side. And then when we get to the point where the guy has been onboarded, now we have an ongoing relationship with a lot of parallel things that might be done at the same time. So let's pick someone else. Let's pick this guy, Kent Allard. And Kent Allard is a guy that reports to me, and he's an active member. And I'm being told here, there are always instructions that we provide to people to tell them what their options are. And what we should do is take a look to see, first of all, whether or not the right information here. Yeah, in the North American division, that's where he's employed. That's his name, that's his mail, and so on. And that's his compensation. I only see this because I have permission to see it. And what I would like to do now is change something. What I'd like to do actually is we just hired another person that that we're really, really happy about. And so we're going to give Kent a referral bonus. Now, this is one of many things. I can propose a salary change, propose a transfer or changing of his job details or personal details, or for that matter, I can terminate the guy. There are lots of things that can be done here, but I'm going to do something as basic as a referral bonus. And so that is going to pop up a form specific with instructions that tells me, okay, we're connected to that other thing. You know, I want to take a quick peek at it. This is the master record. Someone else can take a look at this while we're doing it, and it won't interfere with us at all. I don't get to change any of this, but I certainly want to see all of it. But now, so what kind of a bonus do we want to propose? And I'd say we might, you know, depend. There are a couple of rules that determine what the size of the bonus is, but in this particular case, it's $1,000, and so I will submit it. Oh, okay, I'm being told there's a business rule that says you can't just propose a bonus, you have to explain why. Let's see, surely you just has worked out really, really well. She was a referral from Kent. All right, submit. And away it goes. Now, if I want to keep track of this, I've got a couple of ways of dealing with it. I can click on this and follow it myself. That's an easy way to do it, but I could also pop back up here and notice here is here's the review going on for the referral bonus process that's going on at the very, very moment. I can see that it's assigned to Alice. And Alice is our mutual manager. If I want to open it, I can see it going on. I can see Alice has got it, and I see what the instructions will be for. I can't do anything. It's not assigned to me. But if I open up this browser window, you'll notice that there's a different color here, and that will show Alice's world. And so this is assigned to her. She sees options to approve and reject it. I see the comments. I see even what proposed changes are here. So we're going to propose a referral bonus from 0 to 1,000. So, okay, do I want to approve this or do I want to reject it? I'm going to approve it. And so away it goes. It's off my plate now. Now, if I want to follow this, I can click on it and look at it read-only style because it's not in my hands anymore. It went on to a guy called Luke Cloudwalker. And we can look at his plate for a minute, but we probably saturated you with filling out forms. I kind of want to give you a picture as to what's going on behind the scenes. So you don't need to see form after form after form and not really see a massive difference between them. This is the process that's going on. We start with the whole notion of an employee. And when they're in the active state, there are a lot of optional things that can be launched from the form. One of them is the process for a referral bonus. That's this process. the first thing you do is fill out the form. We did that automatically when we launched the new form. Filled it out with just about everything other than the field that needed to be with the new value. And so we submitted that, and then it went into review stage. Now, what you'll notice here is that there is a step here where we check to see if more reviews are needed. If it's rejected, we just decline it right away. But if we approve it, we need to see if more reviews are needed. There is a business rule defined in here that checks to see if we've reached a high enough point in the organization chart where we don't need to ask anymore. And if we haven't reached that, then we return to the review stage, changing the value of the person who is supposed to be doing the reviewing, and we do it again. So if normally I don't like to draw circles, so I'm going to do this very slowly so it looks more like I'm drawing lines. But yeah, we may repeat this loop several different times until we reach the right level, at which point we let it through. We update the master record to show any changes that might need to be made. And since this is a bonus, we alert the accounting department so they can cut a check or do a direct deposit for the person. The whole thing's been approved, and we return to this. Now, actually, that's not entirely true. We never left this. This is an active state, and while I have somebody's employee record open, remember Luke still has that other thing open. I might say, we want to change this guy's job. Instead of being in quality assurance reporting to Alice, maybe we want to promote him from inspector to inspector level 2. And so that is a separate process that I just launched. And if you follow this, there are 2 sub workflows in progress right now that when we can track either one of them to see what's going on with somebody, including checking to see whose plate it's on. Looks like this is assigned to Luke Cloudwalker. Okay, that's fine. We'll wait, and we'll be patient. But the point is, this employee might have lots of different things going on at the same time, maybe one after the other. We accommodate that kind of reality. And so this kind of looks like a very smart table where we, in order to get to an active state, once you're there, anything can happen until you get terminated, in which case you're here and we've gracefully let you go.
Which would set off its own set of processes and activities, of course.
There is a termination process that tells this workflow when it's finished to move to this point, and then the employee record is finished. If I wanted to get really, really fancy, we may create a procedure if the employee comes back a couple of years later to rehire the person and not lose any of their history. Mm-hmm. That's the great thing about this. This is not a one and done workflow. This is like a case. So I can reopen a case if it makes sense to do so. I've got all the history, all the permissions, all the life cycle stuff. I don't lose anything. That's what makes this kind of fun.
Right. And again, you're managing, well, in this case, you're managing all the processes, but you can assign people to be responsible for these processes. And that's, again, that's the beauty of it, is that it's very fast to do this sort of stuff too, which we should probably dive into soon, Mike.
And the difference between this, where basically I'm managing 100% of employee data from in here, so the employee data is the onboarding process. The difference between that and this example that we were doing before, this employee process, this involved everything going through a number of stages. And then at the very, very end, our goal was to load data into a human capital management system. In other words, we aren't the authoritative store of all employees in this particular example, but it's so much easier to build processes that work with the authoritative data store than it is to use anything that comes out of the box with that. So if they want to own the one version of the truth, that's great. But in this particular case, this company uses us to operate on all of that data.
Right. And should we, Mike, should I retake control and we try to land this thing?
You absolutely should. We've got 20 minutes to go, and I think that's a perfect fit for what we have left to talk about.
All right, let's see. Let's see, get this to work again. We did that. Oh, we have a poll. Sasha, are you going to conduct the poll?
Yes, we are ready. Let's see. Just want to get some information from you guys to see where everyone is. How many of your current employee lifecycle processes are automated?
Yeah, we've kind of been assuming that that employee processes aren't automated much or are automated a lot. I actually suspect it's all over the map.
Yeah.
WEBCON is not the only workflow company I've ever worked for, and it's amazing to see, even when you have workflow technology available to you, you might not use it very much.
Right.
In our case at WEBCON, we actually use our own software to manage our own people, and it works out rather nicely. But not everybody finds it as easy to, well, again, there's a certain cultural discipline that is sometimes necessary to say, no, we actually, at the very least, we want a checklist. If you are willing to at least create a checklist, that's the first step to doing real automation. And that's a fine start. If you get that far, I think we can work with you.
So Sasha, why don't you close that one out? It looks like we have most people, we're on the virtually none side, but, also as expected, there are some people that probably have a tool out there that's automated some part of the process. That's very common, by the way. So I'm not surprised at that, and we do address that in a few minutes. So, maybe we already talked about this one, Mike, and fairly in depth.
By the way, my friend, it is time once again to see your smiling face.
Oh, ta-da.
Thank you.
Yep. So, I think we talked about this, but,
you
there
look
can
much
be a
more
lot
like
of
an
other
ex-professor
activities
now.
too.
So
What was that?
You look much more like an ex-professor now.
Thank you. That's my goal. That's my goal. I think we talked about this one a little bit. There can be lots of things. It might not even be total, HR or even IT related. Parking, the benefit side of the house. I guess the point here is that these processes can be pretty complicated with lots of activities, which just makes it more important to think about automating them as much as possible, honestly.
Indeed, and I sprung that particular slide on Dale at the last moment, and he was kind enough to accept it. But the thing about that slide I wanted to impress on people is that those sub-processes or those activities, those are lots of things that might happen in the course of onboarding somebody. And I'm using them as an example here. What I want to clue you into is we're going to talk about the value of automation in a moment. But I want to spend just a moment differentiating between activity and processes, because you can automate both. Onboarding, just the onboarding process involves potentially a lot of automated activity, because we can automate account provisioning with a PowerShell script. We can automate payroll to some extent. We can automate any of a number of things using a variety of technologies. The process that says you will do these things in the following order for the following reasons under the following conditions, it's harder to find good software for handling that. There are lots and lots of options for quickly running through some automated bursts of activity. And the truth of the matter is you're going to use them together. We'll talk about them more. But the other thing here is the human capital management thing is it's entirely possible that the process is independent of the data as well as the activities. And an HCM, your HCM might be a formal piece of software, turnkey line of business package. Could also be a SQL Server database for all we know.
And I think that's kind of the elephant in the room here, right? Is that I suspect some of the people that are here live with us today and those watching later, they're going to have an HCM. And I think we have a question about that. Sasha, guess what you get to do?
Yes. Let's see here. All right.
Good.
There it is. All right. I think we're asking, how many of you have a human capital management system, an HCM system? Sasha, what are the choices on that one?
Yes, we do, but not cutting it, and then no.
So lots of choices here.
All right, let's see.
I like the nuance of the second option personally, but
Yeah, see, so a few people are being honest, I think, right?
it's all right.
Yep. I mean, I do think that we expect to see a fair amount of people that have one. There are, and the idea here, though, is which we acknowledged earlier on, you're going to have a lot of different systems, probably not connected, right?
That's
One
correct.
maybe do recruiting. Maybe there's, obviously you have your payroll system. You have lots of different systems out there. But HCM systems were at least rolled out with the intent of having a lot of that rolled under one roof. And we, not to jump the gun, but I guess I am. Small and medium-sized firms tend not to have HCM systems. Bigger firms do. However, they usually want to do things their own way, and you may not want to do it that way, and they also may not be low code. So that's some of the other things to bear in mind as we start thinking this through.
That story could be repeated multiple times when it comes to customer relationship management systems.
Yep.
That could be done with some ERP type solutions. I have found that there are small and medium businesses that have built HCM systems using WEBCON BPS or built CRM systems using WEBCON BPS.
Sure. I mean, when you think about it, Mike, it really is a bunch of, HR and the life cycle of that employee is really a bunch of separate processes.
It is, but my philosophy is you do you, as long as it makes sense and you've thought about it well. So if it makes sense, and the larger you get, the more, particularly the more regulated you get, the more important it is to use some well-recognized, well-understood, standardized software package. That's great. My guess is that system of record is not a good system of innovation. So combining something like WEBCON BPS with a human capital management system or a CRM system or an ERP system to handle the processes that move data around, transforming it along the way and seeing to it that activity gets done, that is a very nice match.
And Mike, I know we've talked about most of the things on this slide, but one I want to focus on for a minute, and this is more from the consulting side rather than from your perspective, I guess, and that is, why automate? And what we're seeing out there in the field right now, especially now when people are hiring and try to hire a lot of people right now, first of all, you need to scale it up. That's probably number one. Probably, I would suspect one of the number one reasons people are on here today. And we should have asked that polling question. But anyway, messing up these processes now can be very consequential. Right? You're not going to be able to get through the candidates. You're not going to be able to onboard the people you need in time to meet the demand that you're seeing, right? That's probably the number one thing I would think. But, think about the other side of the equation here. Well, even forgetting the onboarding, let's say people are leaving because, there's a lot of churn in the labor force right now, both onboarding and offboarding, because people are moving jobs right now at unprecedented numbers. But messing these processes up is consequential. And on the onboarding process, if it's too slow, people are not getting to work fast enough. On the other side, it's pretty easy to understand what can happen if you don't de-credentialize people, right? Not too hard to understand. But if the throughput is a lot, the chances of messing up increases, and those can be very consequential. When you have an automation tool running the process for you, it's going to be you're going to reduce the error significantly. And that's very important, and especially in terms of employee lifecycle management. Let's see if I can advance this thing. I wanted to go to sleep on me. We might not have time to talk about this one too much, but what should I automate? Oh, go ahead, Mike.
We kind of already did. So 30 seconds is all we need at most. So the idea here is automating individual activities. I think that's a no-brainer. Scripters talk about this. If this, then that, Power Automate, Zapier people talk about this, and rightly so. The overall process is a different thing, and they actually often work together. So you might actually have a manual process coordinating automated activities. And in fact, if what you're using is a more blood and guts type tool where everything, where you're freed from writing code, but you're not freed from thinking like a developer, you're probably automating the activity, but the process lives in your head.
Right.
And that's a big responsibility to have on you. So in other words, it's getting done efficiently, but you might forget to do it at all.
Yep.
You might also have an automated process that makes sure everything happens, but the work itself is all done manually. In other words, it's assigning tasks and making sure they get completed and reacting to what the outcome was. That's okay too. In fact, that's what happened 20 years ago to a lot of operating theaters, surgeries in the United States. A lot of states right around the same time passed laws that said, you will go through the following checklist before you begin any operation. And suddenly a lot of fatalities and mishaps went away. It annoyed the heck out of surgeons. They don't like losing control to a checklist, but it really made a difference. That was an automated process with manual steps. Later on, some hospitals have actually automated some of the activity as well. But, and of course, me being an automation guy, I hope you automate the whole thing, but
right.
You do you.
Let's this is the topic. I know we could easily go past our time here, but low code is really a key idea here, a key part of our discussion. And you know, not only what it is, but you know why it's so important. And Mike, you know, why don't you tell everyone what it really is?
Low code is all about making sure things are delivered quickly. The delivery is quick, the updates are quick, the maintenance is quick, the monitoring is quick. It's reducing the amount of steps. And if you take a look at some of the things we've done recently with WEBCON, even coming up with the specifications and the requirements can be made much more quick than before if you don't make it manual. So if you don't, it's applying automation concepts to application development. So yeah, if you don't have to write code, you can draw out what you want and try it and then fix it and try it and fix it. That kind of approach is incredibly powerful. It lets you do what you need to do because you've got room to experiment and room to customize.
And the idea here is that, you know, low-code tool like WEBCON brings that capability to the business user. And another thing that I know it drives both of us nuts is you'll often hear the term low-code and no-code in the same sentence.
Yeah.
Like what Mike just described, low-code means a business developer can do most of the things that we've talked about here today and Mike showed you today. But you'll hear this thing called no code. The two of us, and we're probably, you know, may get in trouble for saying this, but I don't care. No code really is a myth.
Yeah.
Usually you're going to encounter the need for some sort of developer or some sort of more technical, highly technical capabilities. Usually run integration, right? You know, some of you identified as having HCM systems. Well, you probably have a payroll system. You have a this or that system. You're going to probably need to exchange data with these systems to make an effective automated process, and you'll probably need a developer for that sort of thing.
Nothing stays no code. If for some reason you actually can begin no code, which I challenge anyway, it's not going to stay that way. One of two things will happen. Either you acquire developer skills so you can add code to it because it doesn't do what you want, or you need to get a developer to help you because it doesn't do what you want. Low code and useful rarely occur in the same sentence for long. You might be impressed with it for 5 minutes and then you want something that's not there.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's not as customizable, extensible, whatever words we're used to use in this case. But yeah, you are in their world. That tool is going to do what it does. And what happens when you want to do something differently, right? It's not going to really accommodate that. So some of the other terms you'll hear about low code, and I think it's a great description, is citizen developer, right? You're taking non-developers and making them essentially able to create tools and solutions, and it really is quite consequential, I should say. And this is the approach that the major software vendors are now taking. Microsoft has released a whole bunch of low-code tools. Amazon, everybody has them now. Oracle. But kudos to you, Mike. And one of the big reasons that we partnered with WEBCON in the first place is because of this whole low-code approach, because they're a pioneer in this. They're one of the first vendors to have the tool out there that was truly low-code.
Well, one of the things that we did is also to say, we didn't say yes to everything in the low-code movement, because citizen development works sometimes, but not always. When you're doing citizen development work, low-code tools to build personal projects, there's been a lot of success on that front. The moment it becomes used by more than one person, the moment the organization has a vested interest in it, there's a whole lot of stuff that citizens either haven't thought of or don't have the time to think of because they have day jobs. And then low-code tools are, at that point, you need to get professionals involved. And what we focused on is making sure the low-code tools did what professionals needed to have done. We have a citizen analyst tool that allows somebody to draw out and explain what they want in a no surprises fashion so that a professional can finish the job. In other words, what we're trying to automate is the conversation between users and IT, as opposed to throwing all the responsibility on the shoulders of the users to build things for themselves. That works for personal stuff. It quickly falls apart the moment you grow past that.
And we get these questions all the time. How do we get started? And this is where I think this is why consultants and software vendors like Mike are important. It's kind of a synergy here. But before you get started, you really need to understand your process. And so it's not just about using a tool. It's about thinking the process through, mapping it out. In fact, WEBCON has a tool that helps you visualize it. But just understand everybody's role in a process. You don't necessarily have to automate the whole thing, but the idea here is just don't automate the process that you have now. Think it through. Is that the process you want? Because if you automate it and it's not a great process and it has a lot of problems with it, you're going to expose them and just make a bad process faster. And that's not necessarily what you're after. So take the time.
Yeah, you impressed me. Impressed upon me, I should say, a really good mantra. Because when we were talking about this webinar weeks ago and planning out what to do, you repeated something I think you probably wake up and say every morning, which is, I refuse to automate a bad process. And I think you're right. If anything, I would say it's not always easy to know that a process is bad without running it and examining it. But yeah, don't automate a bad process. And if you are, fix it quick.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I were getting started, frankly, the first thing I would do is call with them. Yeah, you didn't pay me to say that, and yeah, you're a partner and I like you, but in truth, it's not a bad idea to get some advice from someone who knows what they're doing. It's up to you to decide how much of their advice you use and how many of you want their hired brains. If you want their hired hands, that's up to you. You decide how much of that you want. But a little bit of consultation with hired brains, at least do that. And with them has got some good ones.
And you can change the process a little bit to even make it more friendly for automation. That's the other thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? There's some definitely things you can do in it. Let's say a 10-step process. Maybe step 2 and 3 are the best to be do. Maybe you don't need 7 because we're going to take care of it differently with the tool. So questions. Some things that I'm hearing all the time, certainly as a consultant, and Mike may hear this, but you're probably asking yourself, can we really do this whole citizen developer thing? The answer is yes. And how do we know this? Well, the evidence that I see is not only people asking me about it, but we see people doing it. But just look where the market's going. The focus that Microsoft has on it, Amazon, Oracle, this is their focus of rolling out their next generation of tools. Mm-hmm. And I think, Mike, we addressed this one already, which, when you need help, it's usually, that first project, the training and integrating with other applications. Remember, it's low code, not no code. If you want to exchange data and information with another app, you probably need some help on that. But Mike, this is where I punt this one back to you is how long does it typically take to do something like that you showed us?
That depends a lot on the tool. because depending on how the tool is optimized, it might still want you to spec everything out nice and early. In fact, you'll spend as much time envisioning and negotiating as you are building. What WEBCON excels at is a different paradigm where you come up with a rough definition of what you want, build it quickly, criticize it, and keep improving it in successive cycles.
Okay. Yeah.
We think that people critique better than they imagine, most people, or you can do better work by modifying something that's already there. So get something in front of you to modify as quickly as possible. Because the cost of change is so low with WEBCON, we enable that kind of design, and a constant conversation between professionals and stakeholders almost always produces better results, especially, to your second bullet, if it involves integrating disparate systems together, which is always something you build. You can't really buy it no matter what someone says.
And maybe to round things out, since I know it's just 2 o'clock now and we're going to go slightly over, you know, what are the 3 things that Mike and I really wanted folks to take away from the discussion here today is, you know, flexibility in creating an adapting process to be able to do things quickly. You know, we haven't even said the word agile, you know, and agility, the agility in your ability to respond to changes in the market. That's really what we're after here, and that's what the tool that you've seen today helps you do. But you need it now. And then think about a couple of other things, and that is this whole idea of low code allows you to quickly adapt to these changes. Markets are changing very quickly, but whatever those changes are, you need your processes to adapt quickly. Low code lets you do that. And just to maybe reiterate one more important thing, we've talked about employee life cycle, right?
Yeah.
WEBCON in particular, it doesn't really matter what the process is, right? It'll automate whatever processes are most important to you. So the approach that Mike took today in the demos, the whole low code approach, you can apply that to any of your business processes, okay? And that's an important thing to keep in mind is we were focusing on HR stuff for sure, but you know, don't become too fixated on that.
Yep.
You know what? I don't know if we have any time for questions now, Sasha.
Yep.
As usual, Mike and I went a little long. So why don't we do it differently? If you have questions, why don't people submit them? Can they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. The questions we did get, we can certainly address it by email. Maybe we'll even get a blog out of it. We'll take a look at what questions we have. Please feel free to send them in now, or my contact information from the invite, send them that way, and we can certainly get back.
And I apologize, we did get 4 or 5 questions, so we're going to have to address those in a follow-up. So some of them are really good, so I guess we'll have to do it that way. So, but anyway, hopefully you received some value out of this today, and please let us know how we can help. There are templates, there are starter packs, there's lots of things that can help you jumpstart your whole journey towards not only automating your processes, but even adopting a low-code tool like WEBCON. Mike, I don't know if you had any other words of wisdom.
No, I think you've said it all. It's been a pleasure doing this with you, and again, thank you to everyone who's attended. It's been great having you with us for the last hour.
Thank you very much. Bye, everybody.